Today I'm filming a video with a supercharged, mid-engine, all-wheel drive, ultra-rare 1990s car. It's this. A 1997 Toyota Previa, and it's minivan. Now, I recently brought you videos with the Mercedes-Benz Metris, which was a terrible minivan, and the Honda Odyssey Elite, which was a fantastic. This is a weird minivan. Yes, it is super all-wheel drive and mid-engine. It just probably isn't the super drive mid-engine car you were expecting. So here's the deal. If you've spent even an hour in North America, you know the Toyota Sienna, which has been Toyota's minivan for the last 20 years. Before the Sienna, if you wanted a Toyota minivan, you got this, an egg. The Previa was sold in the US from 1991 to 1997, and there were two versions. There was a base model, which was rear-wheel drive, and it was offered with a mansion, which means this was, in the base form, a manual with all of 38 horsepower. You could also opt for all-wheel drive like this one, and for a supercharger like this one has, it produced a scorching 1 horsepower. Unfortunately, the supercharged version wasn't offered with a transmission. It was automatic only, to the great sadness of car enthusiasts. About four car enthusiasts. So anyway, this is the best of the breed, a Toyota Previa with the supercharged engine with all-wheel drive from the final model year with less than 100 miles. It's one of the few preserved Previas. So today, I'm going to show you around the weirdest minivan. I'm going to show you all of its interesting quirks and cool features, and I'm going to get it out on the road and drive it, and then I'm going to give it a Doug's. And for more of my thoughts on the Previa, click the link below to visit /oversteer. Now I'm going to start on the outside, and specifically I'm going to start with the sliding door. I say sliding door because there's only 3 doors, 2 in the front, 2 in the front, 2 in the front, and 1 sliding door only on the passenger side. There's no door on the driver's side. Now, incredibly, this was actually common in minivans from this era. The thinking was, if you pulled up to the curb, you didn't want your kids inside to get out where it was safe. I guess kids of SUV owners were smart enough to look for traffic, but they figured kids were too dumb. Anyway, the first minivan to actually having doors was the 1996 Dodge Grand Caravan. Before that, all minivans had 2 doors. Next up, I want to move on to the front window shape. Now, you could probably tell this van has windows, and we'll get to all of them in a minute. Maybe the weirdest is this front window that rolls down. Take a look at the shape of this thing. It's like this weird polygon. You will never see another car window shaped like this. Also weird is this little folksy statement from Toyota. Oh, we're going to say till instead of until. You see, we're just like the American vans. We use all the English colloquialisms too. See? Next up, moving on to the rear of the Previa, a couple of interesting things back here. One is, if you look below the bumper, you'll see a little tow hitch area. This thing is rated to tow 35 pounds. That's pretty impressive for a minivan, but it's especially impressive for a vehicle with 1 horsepower. I can only imagine what towing 30 pounds would have been like in the base. Another thing I like back here on the tailgate is jet wing. It's just there. It's functional. Deal with it. And next up, we move on to the front washer fluid and the windshield wipers. The windshield inside the wipers, so when you turn them on, it sort of sprays in the path of the wiper. The engine, however, is missing. So that's a cool feature, but I'm not done yet. Check this out. If you're sitting here in the normal position, the Previa has a fairly typical 3-point belt that comes over your shoulder. That's obvious and normal. However, what would happen then if you rotate the seat around? Suddenly you're not belted in? That doesn't seem like it would be in compliance with any regulations. The weird, of course not. Now we're in the 3rd row, and as you can see, the 3rd row seats are, well, they're sort of stuck up here on the sides of the van. That's because this 3rd row lived in a time before stow and go seats. Now it's common you just fold the 3rd row into the floor. But the interior of the Previa isn't only weird because of its seats. There are also a couple of other interesting quirks in here. I'm going to start with one of them you may have already seen, and that would be the parking brake, which is mounted to the left of the driver's seat. It's not a foot-mounted brake, and they couldn't put it in the middle because that's where the engine is. So it's to the left of the driver's seat in a place you will never see it on any other minivan. Next up, we move on to the gauge cluster. Now, the gauge cluster is fairly normal Toyota 90s gauge cluster, although it does have one little interesting component to it. The warning lights aren't just little pictures that light up like in every other car, which means it actually blocks your visibility. In fact, it opens down below where the sun visor opens by like 3 inches. So if you want to look at yourself with your sun visor open in the Previa, you better do it while you're at Windshield because it's insane. And then there's a vent at the very back of the front door that spits out air onto rear passengers' feet. I've never seen that before. But just as strange as that is, maybe the vent mounted on the roof is even a little bit stranger. Seat passengers, there's 2 on the left side of this seat. You open it up and then you can unfold the cup holders. There's 2 more on the driver's side of the van where that door should be but isn't. So that's 4 total here. And then there's 2 more cup holders for the 3rd row, 1 on each side, which is really impressive. 8 total cup holders in a vehicle from 1997. I mean, back then, people just weren't consuming as many drinks, so that's good. And finally, we turn our attention back to the front, and specifically to the glove, which is where I found the original 1997 Toyota Previa owner's manual, which is pretty cool. Now, I always like to find a couple of Easter eggs inside the owner's manual, and in this case, I found literal Easter eggs. So those are all the quirks and features of the 1997 Toyota Previa LESC All-Track. Well, not quite all the quirks, because now I'm going to drive around in the egg. This thing is weird on the outside, on the inside, on the outside, on the inside, under the hood, everywhere. It's just so unique, and it's such a major departure from the conservative, pragmatic Toyota we know today. And now it's time to give it a dub. Starting with the weekend categories and styling, the Previa is odd, but it's not offensively ugly, and it gets a 4 out. It's a 4. Acceleration is weak, even with the big old supercharger, and it gets a 1 out of 1. Add it all up, and the door is 48 out. 40.